Good evening, everyone, and good morning somewhere in the Atlantic. And Happy New Year to every one of you. And thanks for turning up for the Eurasia live stream. Now, I did that earlier, Scotty. Did that earlier. Just had a few lamb chops, some of your relies, and about 6 eggs. They were really nice. I actually put rosemary on top. It really tasted nice. Well, that's what I usually do anyway. So spice them up a bit. No more peppers. I did that yesterday, and that was rough. I just realised that since I've been carnivorous, when you go back and add a lot of peppers, the experience isn't what I remember it as, if you get my drift. Yes. Very warm downstairs at the other end of the canal, without going into too many details. Nothing, loose or anything like that, just a bit on the warm side, you know. Anyway, oh, Tracy's here. I better be careful what I say. I'm going to get into trouble. Oh, God. There goes the neighbourhood. Richard! Too much sun and vino. Too much sun and vino. I think I've got I've changed a bit the settings. I do look less red. Am I coming? Is my audio and everything else coming across a bit better than what it was earlier, or not? No, yes, maybe. No cheating for me. You're good. Okay. Thanks, Richard. Oh, God. What's my favourite Russian woman want? I better reply to her. Followed by Russian doll. So, oops. Oops. Oops, oops, oops. Anyway, let's move on. She's probably watching with my brother. Uh, and Paul, Happy New Year to you as well, mate. Good to see you on. I did enjoy our conversation last time. Hartfield Carnivore? Ah, yes. Celebratory beef bacon, no doubt. No, not tonight was lamb. Nice little lamb. God, you can imagine in New Zealand just hearing the word lamb, they're just sort of drooling at the thought. Yes, and 6 eggs. That was pretty much it. Pretty much it. Yes, and then I think about half an hour later, I had some yogurt, my evening yogurt. It was pretty close. I had to sort of cram everything a bit closer. Usually leave it about 2 hours or whatever, so it got a bit crammed. And then I had my coffee, So I got all that out of the way, and I still managed to be a couple of minutes late because then I remember I had to make some adjustments to my settings. And the other thing is I did connect properly because it wasn't calibrated properly, my audio and stuff like that. It keeps on, whenever I actually connected it, it keeps on, the new laptop keeps on popping up all these, with Windows 11, all these different options to set up the audio and do this and do you want to confirm this and all that. So got to find a way to actually just set it and say, leave me alone. Anyway, so I'll do that tomorrow and get all that shit out of the way. Mr. Moose, how are you? And Happy New Year to you as well. Johnny, Happy New Year to you, mate. Tom, g'day as well, mate. And Happy New Year to you. Remember, folks, if you have a question for Harry, then at the start of your comment, put the Q. Yes. Yes, the famous Q. And then your answer. Your question. Sorry. I do the answers. Get it right. So, good morning from South Texas, right across the river from Mexico, where all the migrants are camping on the bridge. Well, you're having fun then. You've got something to look at and entertain yourself, I suspect, until they give them the vote. And then they put that other guy that's actually ruling at the moment. Well, he isn't really ruling. He thinks he's ruling. Again in power. Did I say that out loud? I must have. Must be frustrating seeing how badly the federal government is making the situation there in Texas. Oh, there is no America. If a country doesn't have borders, whatever you think about immigration, whatever your views are, at the end of the day, countries must secure their borders. Otherwise, they're not countries. Simple as that. You know, you've got a responsibility to your citizenry. And if you want to change demographics, you want to change anything, you should put it to your citizenry and they should vote on it. That's what a democracy is. But apparently, according to the left, no, that's not the thing. It's whatever we decide because we have the numbers and we'll force it onto you, whether you like it or not. And while others may criticise me, I think that if you had like a stampede of 100 million Chinese invading Mexico or any other country, they would be really annoyed about that as well. So, you know, you got to put the foot on the other side and actually think, what if I was on the receiving end? How would it look to me? You know, each society has the right to exist. Each society has the right to govern itself, and each population has the right to decide what composition its society will have. You know, otherwise we don't follow the rule of law. We have no democracy. We have nothing other than autocracy and other than whatever goes, whatever. You know, you try doing that to China. Get to the border, they'll mow you down with machine guns. Try doing that to any other country. So, yeah, that's the reality of the situation. And no country, or you know, no country basically needs to provide you with anything. Simple as that. In the past, Australasia and the US and many other countries welcomed immigrants because they wanted to make up the numbers. They had their own political reasons. Their society sort of went along with it to a large extent, kept on voting the same people in. It was understandable. But since then, they've said enough. But even immigrants, I know many immigrants in Australia who come from immigrant backgrounds are saying enough, we don't want any more. Because they see that there is, you know, housing shortages, there's all sorts of other issues and implications, and just having millions come in to a society can be very destabilizing for that society. You know, so, and especially if you're going high tech, if you want to remain at living standards, you've got to go to more high technology and all that. That means the jobs will change and you need highly educated people to function within a much higher technological society. So what are you going to do? Have a whole lot of people that come in to basically pay welfare who have never paid tax in their life, who have never contributed to the society? So you've got to look at it from that side, not from the other emotional side. And the Refugee Convention does not guarantee either citizenship or permanent residency. Never has. Go and read the Refugee Convention that all countries have signed. It doesn't give rights to people that are legally coming in, or anyone coming into any society, a free right. Now, politicians may have corrupted that whole system, but that wasn't the intention. The intention was that if you have a population that's under threat, or people that are under threat, they've got the right to come across, be supported until things in their own country settle down and get sorted out where they can go back to. That was the whole purpose of it. So, we've actually turned things upside down completely and destabilized a whole lot of societies. So, so we need to be quite clear about that. As an Orthodox Christian, I feel for those people. I feel for people that are in difficult situations and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, that's also a cop-out when you run away and you don't stand, because as a true Christian, you should be willing to even be martyred if necessary to fight against injustice, the wrongdoings, because it's not only, we get saved by faith and our actions. Our actions are defining us, making us better people, so we're more God-like and we can connect, in this spiritual way with Christ. So, we've got a responsibility to our society, to our families and ourselves even, to do the right thing and not run away. I consider a lot of these people cowards who left their society and didn't seek to change it or improve it or fight against evil and injustice. So, I've got less sympathy in that regard. Consider me harsh, as you like. I don't mind. But as I said, these are weak men who are running away, and these weak men destroy societies. It takes strong men to build societies and weak men to destroy it. We've seen that throughout history. Do you want weak men coming into your society that can destroy it? I'll leave that up to each one of you individually to decide. This is not a political channel. It is, after all, a nutritional and lifestyle channel and stuff like that. So we'll move on from that. My other channel will start being promoted from next year, and I'll be doing most of the geopolitics, faith related things, and a whole lot of other things, and demystifying a lot of things on the other channel. So the one that got a strike as well by YouTube. I can never win. So, yeah. Yeah, so that sort of, we'll leave that and we'll move on. Anyway, let's go. Yep, we'll move on. We've already discussed that. Please don't trigger Harry with political stuff. You see, Stefan knows me. It's not the right. It's not the right live stream. I will have other live streams that will be political in nature. We can discuss anything. Hi, Harry, Johnny. There are some on the internet saying stainless steel that has chromium would leach into the food and is toxic. True or false? Sounds bullshit to me in that regard. As far as I've never seen a study showing that stainless steel has those effects, because the way chromium binds to, to aluminium and to the other sort of components and metals that they've put in, combines in such a way where it actually changes its structure, and it's quite it strongly binds. So it's not an issue whatsoever. So we've never seen any issues of that sort, and it's because it's an intermetallic. it's changed in nature. It's sort of a combination of of other metals, or two metals, or three metals, or whatever, that come together and create what is called an intermetallic, and it changes its nature and the way it functions. It's a different thing with a coating. That's a different thing altogether. So if you were to put like a thin coating, like a lot of the non-stick pans and all that, that's what is brittle and it can actually break off. An intermetallic is a completely different thing. It actually bonds in certain ways where it's like a single metal nearly, like a new single metal. So it's a completely different. So you know, so uh, putting a surface, a specific coating, a coating is not the same as an intermetallic. They are two different things, and so they are wrong. And they would have to demonstrate with an actual study that actually showed, you know, hundreds and hundreds of usages and showing that happens. And some people have actually got stainless steel pots and pans and all that, and they've actually done some of the tests, even though the stainless steel was 10 years old, and they found nothing in the water. So maybe it takes 20 years. By then, you probably have replaced it anyway, so it's pretty much irrelevant. So I think it's bullshit, personally. But if you're concerned, there's always, getting a cast iron. But remember, do not use seed oils to season it, because otherwise it will rust if you don't. But you can actually use animal fats to season it, and you just wipe it down. So, and that's what people used in the past, animal fats. And, some people also used things like coconut or oil and stuff like that you can use in some parts of the world. But, animal fats of what have been used, it's either been tallow or lard, primarily. I think in some parts of France, they actually use duck fat to season it. So it's just slightly different. So if you're concerned, Johnny, just go for cast iron. Uh, it will last forever. As long as you season it and make sure that it doesn't actually get exposed to end up rusting, in that regard. So you've got to be very careful with water as well, how you clean it, and season it. Protect it against rusting. Anyway, Richard, ideally your food should not be stored long term. I cannot see a reason to worry using stainless bowls, utensils, etc. Even strain my kefir in a stainless bowl. Yeah, look, I don't think there's an issue whatsoever in that regard. So if you're using glass, ceramic, pure ceramic, or porcelain, something like that, non-issue. If you're using some of the other materials, yeah, it can be a problem. Um, any coating can be vulnerable to damage depending on the utensils that you use. You should always use, so if you've got a ceramic coating on a metal surface, that could break up and that could be a problem under certain circumstances, depending on what's in the actual ceramic coating and what the base is made of as well. So there's a lot of caveats to that as well. But at the end of the day, if you use wooden utensils, not metal utensils, even a ceramic surface should hold pretty well for quite some time. So anyway, one step up from cast iron, got there. Well, I see. Yep. We're just covering all those. We're still discussing. That was me. Don't know why I put myself up, but anyway. Rosemary, the name of the lamb. Yes, Scotty. But we don't want to excite Richard. Just keep that in mind. Oh, he's my favourite. Lovely lady that likes to wind my clock. How are you, Tracy? Uh, I'll have to have a chat with your husband. But anyway, that's for the new year. Pavel, Q Q Q Q. Now, do I answer that in threes, like in three segments, or one segment? How do you want it? Uh, okay, back to this source of boron on a carnivore diet. Would someone like Michaela Pedersen benefit from supplements? Recently, she had a baby, so I guess the trace amounts of boron she was getting were enough. Look, because you have to remember minerals on a species appropriate diet, one, we require less. The reason why somebody on a diet which is like a high carbohydrate diet, you will burn through more boron. Okay? You'll burn through more magnesium, boron, you name it. You'll just burn through. So your mineral requirements and even some of the B vitamins on a carbohydrate, like thiamine, require double the thiamine because there's two enzymatic pathways for glucose metabolism. So the moment you actually introduce a certain level of glucose into the system, your requirements for minerals, for all micronutrients goes up. So, and most of the research and most of the RDIs and all that is based on a diet heavy in carbohydrates. So that's why I say the RDIs are more as a reference guide and all that, but I wouldn't get too wound up about, and the other thing is we're also getting more taurine and also getting more methionine to synthesize taurine in our body. And taurine is an osmolyte. It regulates electrolytes. It regulates all minerals in the body and achieves homeostasis. So if you don't have enough of a certain mineral, your kidneys will recycle it and hold on to it. But in a carbohydrate-rich environment that burns through, that is low in methionine, low in taurine, and you're also burning through those things, and you're actually using insulin to hold on to your electrolytes more than, the osmotic effect of taurine. As a consequence of that, your mineral requirements drop as far as, you you will hold on to certain things, but other things you won't hold on to as well. And so the requirements on a carbohydrate diet go up because they're required to deal with carbohydrates as well. So as a consequence, you get more than enough from the diet for the requirements that we need for certain biological processes, which is very little in terms of boron. I use it as a supplement to normalize hormones. That means people that have not on a species appropriate diet or have come onto a species appropriate diet and still things haven't normalized to do a more what I call a biohack and rapidly normalize things a bit faster, where the diet may take a number of months to, things to sort themselves out. We're doing it in a couple of weeks, much faster. That's the difference, So we're using it as a biohack. Um, so just think of that. Now, as far as Michaela Pedersen, I have no idea, because like anybody can say anything that they do at home. I can tell you that I basically, fantasize about a number of things, that I basically walk around on one leg all day long. I could tell you anything and you could say, wow, do you do that, Harry? How impressive, Harry. You walk on one leg, and on weekends I walk on water. That's just bullshit and heresy. But anyway, I'm just joking. Joking, Lord, I'm joking. So anybody can say anything. You're not living with me. You have no idea. Okay, that's why I say ignore all this other noise. Stick to the N15 data, the science, the mechanistic stuff, the stuff that I present to say, well, I'm arguing this point. This is what I've got to back it up. The rest is just noise about people's personal life. If you're into that sort of gossipy sort of world and all that, I feel for you. I would find them boring. I'd fall asleep. I don't really care what other influencers do or do not do or whatever. Who cares? Um, if something works for them, fantastic. If it doesn't work for you, consider other options. And I have no idea what they do and whether it would benefit her or not or whatever. Because the thing is, you don't know what people do in their personal life. And so, yeah. And I don't know what her genetics are either. So, what sort of symptoms is she having or issues? I know she had a lower folate, which sort of indicates to me she's probably not getting enough choline in her diet, and she may have that genetic problem, to support the methionine cycle. And then she would not deplete the folate part, that would hold up. And I know she was doing basically, you know, a diet that was richer. And this is why that she was actually having some liver and organ meats and all that. You should be getting enough folate if you're doing that for methylation purposes. If you're not, and you're actually depleting that, that means you've got a choline thing. And it sort of explains some of her health issues in the past. She may have a more severe choline deficiency issue than what I have. So, plus, as Tracy points out, reminds me, women have that sort of attitude, just to remind you. She had a baby after all, Harry. Thank you, Tracy. Yes. So I was getting onto the baby thing. And the other thing is she could have, has lower levels of, you know, some level of depletion due to the pregnancy as well. So there's a lot of nuancing, a lot of stuff and all that. But I don't sit around trying to work out what people do and stuff like that. If she was to approach me, or I suspect if she was to approach anyone else, and ask, that's a different thing altogether. I think she's handling herself. Good luck to her. Um, yeah, I sort of will leave it at that. I don't like telling other people how to live their life. I just talk about, you know, I'll criticize people that are talking just nonsense, and putting nonsense arguments forward. And I'll criticize, uh, people if they are making out that certain things are healthy when they're not, stuff like that, where they're using either poor research or they're just um, propagandizing. But I don't get involved in the machinations of people's lives. I just don't care. They're irrelevant. They're irrelevant to the science. They're irrelevant to the N15 data. They're irrelevant to carnivore. They're just people's lives. And there's going to be a lot of variability. Who knows? Because there's nothing controlled. There's nothing measured. So it's impossible to know what people have done, what they haven't done, what they still continue doing, what they're exposed in their own personal life. They're exposed to, do they have mold in their homes? Are there heavy metals? Do they live in a town where there's a factory on the other side of the city and it's bellowing out a whole lot of heavy metals? I've got no idea. So I can't make, just out of my ass, make comments about people. It's just not the right thing to do. Anyway, let's move on. Bites on the way out. Marcelo, yes. Happy New Year to you as well, mate. Uncle Harry is amongst us. How do you do? How do you do, young Harry? Greetings from Morocco. You down in Morocco, mate? God, you're always last time you were in Mexico, now you're in Morocco. You're always travelling around. Currently in Marrakesh, yes. Finally, I can afford lamb chops every day. That's true. Yes, they do have lamb and goat quite a bit down in those parts. There is also lamb brains, freshly steamed. Yes, yes, very traditional. Yes. You only find it in the Middle East, Greece, parts like that, in parts of southern Italy as well, and in parts of regional Spain as well. You'll find that, but most other places you won't. So you're having a ball of a time. I'm glad you are. Enjoy yourself. Anyway, Pavel, how much D Manos? It's about. I think that it varies. It varies. With D Manos, um, I'm it. We primarily use it to deal with things like urinary tract infections. You know, bladder infections. You know, urinary tract infections. That means you've been sticking your little into places where you shouldn't, and you've picked up something. That sort of stuff. So, and I suspect quite a few people will do this new year. But anyway, we'll move on. We won't get into sexualizing this live stream. And so it's used in that regard rather than actually pounding yourself with antibiotics every time. And the other thing is it's quite effective with H. pylori. So, but H. pylori, I would sort of, because there's different, the most around the 500, I would probably go with H. pylori, one, go a bit double on that. The only problem, just letting you know, when you do go double, a bigger dosage to sort of knock out H. pylori, it can create loose stools, just letting you know. Okay? So, that can be a bit of an issue. Or you can do it a bit slower with 500 rather than the 1,000 in order to avoid the unpleasantries, so to speak. But I find that the higher dosages seem to deal with the sort of issue a bit faster. Okay. I know I've heard some people say that they've taken like 2 grams, because usually you get about 500 in each capsule, and they've taken like 4 capsules and they get 2 grams worth of D-Manos. And they usually say, well, I don't care, I'm going to do it for a couple of days. I don't agree with that because there's a potential that, some other bacteria could get knocked out as well. And we want to, that's why I sort of go, well, let's use some of the other stuff you know, like taurine as well, things like that, an acidifier to sort of increase the stomach acidity. And this is like an additional thing because sometimes people can struggle with H. pylori. And there also could be the other issue where H. pylori has become, antibiotic resistant, and it's really hard to knock it out. So I know a number of people will try with antibiotics and, doing and using an acidifier. And while they'll suppress slightly the H. pylori, they won't eliminate it. Now, there is research that shows if you combine D-Manos with antibiotics together, it has been shown to eliminate H. pylori completely 100%. But I usually say as well, throw in some taurine in there as well. And the reason for that is because I want the proton pumps to work properly and be regulated properly in order to, and I usually do the other thing as well. I usually I don't start with antibiotics and D-Manos. I usually start with getting in BPC 157 together with taurine to suppress H. pylori heal the actual, fix up the proton pump so they're producing more sort of acid to suppress the H. pylori, because it tries to counteract the proton pumps. And that's where you get GERD and reflux as well. So it can be from H. pylori, not necessarily, the low stomach acid. If you've been eating grass for, you know what I mean, vagunarized food for a very long time. And so we want to first use taurine to fix up the proton pumps and regulate them. And we want to use, certain acidifiers and like HCl and stuff like that in order to increase the acidity, to suppress slightly the H. pylori, and and then we want to hit it with, once we've achieved some reduction in numbers, then we want to hit it with D-mannose and um, antibiotics in order to basically really just give it the double hit and vaporize it out of the stomach completely. Take it out, remove it completely, like 100% elimination. So that's my approach to it. Others have different approaches. It's fine. I don't care. I'm just telling you my approach and what some of the science has shown, that that they were doing very high doses, and it was in an animal model. So I'm sort of going, well, humans are, there are some differences, and so I sort of approach it that, and there is also, because of a lot of antibiotics that humans have used, we've also got some level of resistance. So I prefer actually just in case some people have, like, H. pylori that is slightly resistant to antibiotics. I want to suppress them, so when I hit them with D-mannose antibiotics, there's only a smaller amount, and we eliminate. They don't have a possibility of survival, is what I'm trying to achieve. So it's a two-step sort of approach. I hope that makes sense. Yes, Pat. Yes. Yes. In the past, it wasn't a problem. Maybe it was the fibre reducing the, binding slightly, or putting more fluids in there and sort of minimising that sort of feeling, that warm feeling. Uh, See, I better tell Bart. If you have some peppers, fibre, it may be indicated. I didn't say that loud. Hopefully. Uh, God. No cheating for me this new year. Not interested. Uh, You're good, Roy. Sounds good. LOL. And oops. Where's the Q? Jay, where's the Q? I should ignore this question. Where's the Q? How do you gain fat on zero carb carnivore? Maybe insulin bumps storing fat from having multiple meals. Can dairy, such as cheese, be a factor? Cheese isn't as good as yogurt, and probably the best is probably milk. A lot of milk. Um, Probably a whey supplement, because that'll actually give you a bigger insulin hit. So if you were combine a lot of fat in a meal and then hit yourself with whey supplement, you'd probably end up storing a bit more of that. And that would minimize some of the actual the uncoupling effect going to the brain adipose tissue. So, well, you see it with tribal people. What do? They consume as much fat as they can find, because they have the same problem. They're too lean, and they have to consume more and more fat. And in the certain seasonal things, they have fruit with fat, in order to store more fat, because fructose will do it. And so if you want to live like a Hudser, you would use seasonal sugar sources that have got fructose in order to fatten up, and put a bit more fat on to increase your fat stores slightly. And you would go through those stages no different than a tribal person. Or you can have excess fat. You can get liquid fats like cream and have more cream in the summer months to mimic that. And that's actually better long term, because you're not getting a you're getting a low deuterium source of fat rather than a high deuterium. So it's actually healthier. So having more liquid fats would push up the actual fat content in your fat cells, and so you could do like excessive cream for a couple of months, mimicking interglacial periods, because in the interglacial periods, we didn't have a lot of fat. Fatty animals were really fat in the very cold glacial periods, and we would, just eat heaps and heaps of it from different animals, especially mammoths and stuff like that. But once you get into the interglacial period, the only way, and you can actually see the tribal people, if you look at photos, you'll see through the drier months and all that, when the leaner. They got six pack. And then in the seasonal stuff, when there's seasonal fruit and stuff like that, they've got a bit of fattiness on their stomach. That is putting back those fat stores, So, and that's what they do. They cycle. Or you can just use a lot of cream through those similar months to do the same thing and mimic, interglacial fatting up, sort of similar way. Carnivore muscle. Thanks, mate. Thanks, Carnival Muscle, and Happy New Year to you. And thanks for your small contribution to the live stream. Most of the money that I get for because I don't ask people for donations, but any stuff that actually gets sent to me, plus some of the money that I make from the thanks, Richard, from the YouTube, from some of the advertising, even though I've actually put my advertising down to the lowest level on my live streams. At least I can't on the others because they won't allow me, but on the live streams, it's you can actually set the amount because you don't want interference. I don't know what they do when after the live stream's finished. They probably go back to their just standard advertising sort of whatever. I don't bother sort of setting anything. The only thing with my live streams, I put it to the lowest, so because I know that I don't want people getting too much interrupted in the live streams. So you will notice that that's a new policy which YouTube have brought in to introduce advertising in live streams. So anyway, I put on the lowest one, but the small amount that actually I generate from all these sources goes primarily to paying for my Zoom professional account. And that means you guys then are able to get the Zoom service, and we have Zoom meetings and stuff like that. People can just turn up and stuff like that. And then the other part goes into some of the software and all that. Now, the recent upgrade to my computer, it didn't go to that. That was out of my own pocket, but that's a different thing altogether. But obviously, it does benefit it because actually means now the processor actually works faster, and it means there's less jerkiness. That's all gone as a consequence because the process actually. What happened was everything was fine, and then StreamYard did an upgrade to their system. And the old thing when they computer software is upgraded, you get what is called bloatware. And then what happened was you started see now this is in real time. Before it was had that jerkiness. That's a consequence of adding more layers of software and code, which means that my old computer was struggling to process that. It was specifically the graphics card. Now with the new latest RTX graphics card, which is a 4001, that problem's been eliminated. So it actually works much better. So I didn't need to do the upgrade. The other computer was fine for my general usage of what I use it for. But if I'm basically going to get, so I'm not going to see any benefit on the financial front for upgrading for a very long time. So, but that's not the purpose. The purpose is if I actually wanted to make more money, I would have dumped YouTube a long time ago and gone back to my investment stuff that I spent most of my time doing. But as I remind myself all the time, you can't take the shit with you. So, and it's important it's not only by faith, but also by action that we get saved. And also, we're more than just money machines or living for just our own gluttony and whatever else. So, yes. Anyway, no more theology, Harry, because we care. Thank you. Thank you, Richard. Don't shut up. Take my money. Okay. Thank you, Tom. Okay. Now, I don't understand how Bart ate 6,000 plus calories and lost weight, lifted his metabolic rate. That's what he did. So what happens is when you actually increase your metabolic rate, so you actually put more stuff in. Can I just deactivate that? Bloody hell. So if you actually increase your metabolic rate, all of a sudden, what happens is your body usually overshoots. This is the reason why it's what bodybuilders have done for years. It's a bodybuilder thing. I know they call it priming and cutting, but it's a priming and then fasting. But it really is beefing up and cutting. It's the old bodybuilders thing, just slightly modified. So what you do is you're basically, exercising, lifting weights a bit, exercising, because he was doing a bit of that. But in this case, he didn't do any of that, and he didn't do it deliberately just to prove a point. But usually, to get it really much faster happening than even Bart does it, you have to basically do some weights and stuff like that. But what he did was he ate primarily high leucine content food. This is important because when you get the signal to the muscle, the leucine signal, and it tells the muscle, increase your protein synthesis. What it means, it's telling the body is, I need more nutrition. This is why bodybuilders eat so much. Why? Because if the body says, I'm not getting enough energy, not enough of the precursors that will produce ATP, so the mass of fat or sugar. In this case, we do it a better way because we don't raise insulin. We just have insulin signaling in the muscles and IGF-1 and mTOR in the muscles. We don't have this signaling in the adipose tissue. And that's important. By not having in the adipose tissue, it means that hormone-sensitive lipase is not suppressed, which means that when you're not eating, you're going to be using body fat. So you use the extra food and you tighten it into 1 or 2 meals or 3, but not keeping it a bit tight, and you amplify the amount of nutrients coming into the body. Goes, shit, I'm just getting too much, more than I'm used to. I've got a set point here, and you're giving me this amount. And so what it does automatically, it immediately raises to deal with this excess, because it thinks, oh, this is just short term, but it's too much to maintain, and it forces metabolic rate up. And then all of a sudden you go, gotcha, 2 weeks. I'm pushing, lifting up the metabolic rate. And even and it overshoots because the body's never accurate. It's like when you get gluconeogenesis, when you do exercise, what does the body do? The body doesn't know when you're going to stop exercising. So it always, to be on the safe side, it also increases slightly more glucose. So with exercise, always your glucose slightly goes up as a consequence of more gluconeogenesis, because it doesn't know, it wants to be on the safe side to have a bit more in the system rather than a bit less. And it's the same thing with the metabolic rate. It wants a bit more to handle the massive influx that's coming. And then you fast, then you cut. But the metabolic rate's right up here. What do you think is going to grab the energy from? Your adipose tissue. And it's going to go. But also, as you're losing also that weight, your metabolic rate comes down again. And so you get that effect, but you get then to a new, that if you actually eat at that level, then you get to a new plateau. Got it? And that's what he did. It's a nice trick and it works. And that's how you can actually reset. So you don't actually cut food intake, you increase food intake and then you cut. And then you get that effect. So that's been well known. How to break from, plateaus and set points. Anyway. So, and the reason why you constrict your food intake to a smaller window is because you don't want insulin staying up in the system for too long. You want to push up your metabolic rate, not keep insulin high. That's why you don't spread your meals as much. It's all a matter of, thinking the body that you're sitting around, you've just hit a mammoth. Shit, this guy's just eating a mammoth. I've hit a mammoth and I'm stuffing myself, absolutely stuffing myself. And so it goes, well, this is just too much. We need, and also, in the brown, the brown fat, which is the behind, your organs, the upper part of your chest, and the back part, all that brown adipose tissue will slightly increase, and it also will increase because it's very mitochondrial heavy. It'll actually radiate more heat, so you'll actually feel warmer as well. So you'll feel that thermic effect. That's basically uncoupling of that mitochondria and increasing the heat inside you as well. So we usually say, your metabolic rate's gone up. That's why you're warmer. And it's actually the brown adipose tissue uncoupling. But anyway, people have these confused ways of viewing things. Ignorance, I call it, but anyway, I'm just being nice. Oh, is that a rodent? A loving mice? Little rodent? Must be. It's from Witchy Poo. Dairy helps if you try to gain weight. Yeah, it does as well. Yeah. So if you have a lot of dairy, yeah, as well. I use it as well, but I use it because I need for my purposes, but also I use a lot of dairy fat for maintaining to turn over things for reducing deuterium in my fat cells. But that's another story that I've discussed before. I'm not going to discuss it again. Sarah Pugh mentioned Van Allen's belt recently and that people in California are affected by its radiation. Thoughts? People in California? Why in California? Never heard that. I'll have to check. Look, I'll have to check her video out in order to work out exactly what she actually said in that regard. So, okay. So until I actually check it out, I can't tell you. Hot, Trot Harry. Okay. Pre-molested Roy. Oh, nice little boy. Is that what you're saying? You guys have got sick fantasies. Anyway, I'll move on. Sounds tasty. Is it? What sounds tasty? Did I miss something? Oh, it was at the Lamb. Probably missed something. I missed a lot of things. Vaccine. I might be wrong, but I think oh, don't get out of my ear. I think I remember you mentioning that you would not use pink Himalayan salt because there's certain minerals in it. It can have some heavy metals. And the thing is, I don't want to do a whole lot of research trying to find out. Oh, it's 7:30. God, I haven't changed my glasses over. The proper royal look. Now you can actually use that terminology. The rest of you ignorant. uh, I won't say any more. Probably lose some of them otherwise. Anyway, where were we? Yeah, so I'm more concerned about heavy metals. I get river salt, which is this pinky sort of very what's it called? Uh, they'll come to me eventually. Anyway, so it's really that and anything like that. Or another salt like Celtic. I actually use salt, river salt, and I also use salt that's from what do you call it? Uh, uh, from salt beds. Mm, yeah. Anyway, let's move on. Metabolomics. Ebu just that the future of medicine. Oh, what he means is that everything's a metabolic disease, and he's probably right in that regard. You know, but it's not just metabolomics. Just your there are genetics and stuff like that, and there are specific species appropriate diet that the N15 data shows, which I suspect he won't be talking about that. It's sort of a new sort of movement within the naturopathic world, which is saying, well, your metabolic systems are what really determines a lot of that. And yeah, so it's a bit of a funny thing anyway. But anyway, I don't like the philosophy behind it. Yes, a lot of our diseases are modern diseases of civilization are metabolic diseases, but that's really a sort of tight. There's a lot of things. There's blue light. There's lifestyle. There's a lot of elements to it. It's not just, if you're going to do proper medicine, you'd have to do like deuterium depletion, proper understanding of deuterium, proper understanding of light, proper understanding of species appropriate nutrition. It's a much more complex, nuanced picture than just, the future of medicine is metabolomics, your metabolism, the way it works and all that, and what you should and shouldn't eat and stuff like that. And it's usually, a whole lot of smoothies and greens and shit like that full of oxalate and whatever else that he's been, so a lot of them, I have an issue with a lot of their views that people have on these things. It's weird. Yeah. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Lauren, sending you the best wishes for the upcoming year. To me, when it comes to advice for normal lifestyle, you're the guiding light from Hobart. Thank you, mate. Um, yeah, I think I base the stuff that it's on sound foundations rather than just speculations as much as possible. So I'm not into fashionable stuff. That's why I've got a traditional faith that goes back thousands of years and stuff like that. I don't care what the modern world thinks, so to speak. My views are based on me looking into them, looking at the reasons, reasoning them out, you know, whether it's lifestyle, whether it's anything. And I'm very traditional in some things when it comes to family and relationships, which is not fashionable nowadays. I understand that, but I don't care. And it's the same thing with science. I believe that you have to be a critical thinker when it comes to understanding and analysing things. And science isn't basically settled, never is. It's constantly changing. But there are foundation stones like, 1 + 1 = 2. The speed of light is more or less 186,000 miles per second, or nearly 300,000 kilometers per second. There are some things, the strong nuclear force or weak nuclear force has a certain level of strength, and it's measurable. There are certain absolutes. In nutrition, as far as I'm concerned, I look at the bones of our ancestors, the N15 data, and the zinc data is quite foundational in telling me what our ancestors, let me make it quite clear, everyone's ancestors ate for most of our existence. So these are the things that I'm well grounded on these foundations. And so it comes from those foundations. Unfortunately, many other people like to follow fashions. You'll never see me doing that. If you want to get it all wrong, follow fashions. If you want to follow foundational sort of data, and then you'll be closer to the truth. I'm not saying that I'm perfect in my understanding of every single nuance about physiology and biochemistry. Even people that are practitioners in the field for longer than me wouldn't claim that, and if they did, they're crackpots. But let's say I've investigated things and reviewed things and looked into things a bit deeper than many other people, which quite easily can sit parroting certain things, but trying to understand deeply how things interact and work in the body gives you much deeper insights. Anyway, but thank you for your kind words. You bashed on rat studies when criticising others, but also use them to prove your point. What are they useful for? What we can show is mechanisms in a mammalian system. See, when I criticise people on using rat studies is when they use them inappropriately. So they'll use them to basically argue that this food doesn't work this way, or that food and all that. And I go, well, their metabolism is completely different to ours, and you can't compare humans with them. But you can compare certain things. So if you've got a mechanistic study and you give a rat a certain compound and it has an effect on their physiology, and you give other animals as well and it has a similar effect, the duration is different because their metabolic rate is higher. So for a human, it may take 10 years. For a rat, 3 months. But the results is going to be similar because in the physiology of all mammals, a certain compound like taurine or things like that will have a similar effect. And we've seen it through, and that's why I provide also not animal, but also human studies to show that in all mammals it actually works. So I show mechanism, and I show that it works in all physiology to back up that it's just not a one-off chance thing. The way other people use it is in a very reductionist way and make claims that are way beyond the scope of what the study was talking about. And there I have an issue and I'll criticise them. So it depends on how you use that data and what you extrapolate, and whether there is something truly there you can actually see, or you're speculating and you tell people, I'm speculating. Okay? So it depends on the way you use that information. It's not the same, Tom. A lot of these people just use it. Like I was recently, what was his bloody name? A young bloke that is a PhD candidate. I just can't remember his name. He had a video not too long ago that actually that he was basically looking at some sort of compound on that has an effect on longevity. I think it was Nicholas. Yeah, I think that may be the guy, some young bloke. And yeah, that's right, Tom. Yeah, and he was just looking at the bars, and the bars were actually like this. The scatter plot was all over the place, and the p-value was like 0.058. I mean, and he was saying, I can see something there that it actually shows a positive effect. And I go, no, it doesn't. Not at all. What are you looking at? It completely shows nothing. Zero, zilch, nada. You know, it's just nonsense that he was making a claim. So, and that's the problem. And I'll call those sort of people out because the p-value was just ridiculously, the probability that it was that or many other things was very high because when you've got a p-value that in order to basically claim that the likelihood it could be anything else, you need a p-value at least of 0.005 or less. And if it's 0.001, that's actually probably one of the stronger things. But unfortunately, a lot of people are using or arguing from a very poor position in terms of the research that they're looking at. And so, it's justified for me to criticise them and say, well, so yeah, Lithuania it was, and it's the physionic, as he calls himself, and he was trying to make about mitochondrial health and autophagy. And if you look at the actual study, it was about, if you look at the actual study, it doesn't actually show what and even he sort of says, oh, he's not convinced, but I'm going, well, why are you arguing there is something there when there isn't? So you can't have it both ways. It was quite clear that it was just garbage, nonsense. But anyway, so it is what it is. Yes, yes. Do you want me? Such a lovely person. How dare you, Tracy? Statin spokesman. Well, he is definitely a statin spokesperson. Yeah, truly. God, pretty bad. Super low LDL, yeah, on statin, super brain fog, definitely fade fog. Yeah, look, yeah, look, I don't know whether maybe he's having one of those. What do they call not the standard statins? Um, case, what are they called? Um, um, I don't remember it anyway. No, I don't think it's Zavanston. Oh, I can't remember. I just can't remember. Oh, PC, PCK, PCAK9. That's it. Inhibitors. That's it. Yep. So you don't know. So you clear out more LDL out of the bloodstream. That's what it is. Yeah, and give yourself insulin resistance at the liver level. Fantastic, and derange things even further. PCAK9. That's it. PCAK9. That's the correct way. PC. A K9. Yep. So he's probably on one of those, which is even worse than a statin. If anything can be worse in terms of how much it lowers, and then you end up brain fogged completely and probably downstairs completely asleep. But she's probably got a bit on the side, who knows? I'm just speculating, I'm not saying anything. Triggs, 80, HDL, LDL, 15, Joe's panel. Okay, is that his panel? I've never, was that on some program did they or his wife show that somewhere? Well, he won't be around for too long, because if you look at the Framingham study, those with the highest cholesterol were still around, 93% were still alive after 30 years. Those with the lowest, it was basically 73%. So keep that in mind in that regard. Tester, how are you? How are you? What are the steps to preserve skin health and reverse aging? Don't glycate it. Don't eat anything which is high in fructose in particular, or take seed oils. That's the key thing. That's the one that actually is going to do most work for you. I don't actually, even though probably the only supplement that I do take is taurine, as everyone knows, and so I don't, that is anti-glycating. So it keeps the glycation down in your sort of proteins around your body, in your brain as well. It actually creates new brain cells, and it breaks down fibrosis, which is important, which is what I used it primarily for. But it regulates your electrolytes, does all that sort of, but also lowers glycation everywhere in the body. So that is one really damn good thing. And it also makes sure that protein folding happens properly. So misfolded proteins is part of aging. Preventing misfolded proteins, inhibiting basically entropy in the body. That means disorder, breakdown. That's what taurine does. If we want to go into the biophysics of the thing, or quantum biology, taurine as a molecule has an anti-entropic effect. But that's for another future video, me covering taurine's effect at the quantum biological level for another day. But and that's probably why our physiology of organisms around don't collapse. It's probably taurine or this sulfur that has this osmotic and effect on, because it's in all organisms. And seafood is actually the highest crustaceans, because they're in the water under a lot of pressure and stress. Their cells, so they need more to regulate pressure and also protect themselves from the sheer pressure of the oceans, and to prevent, because underwater or in the water pressure and all that, it's much higher entropy. So to inhibit that entropy, or that disorder that those organisms will break up, in a sense, taurine actually has that effect. So it's one of the most ancient sulfurs in inhibiting that. So it's one of the best things you can do beyond the carnivore diet, and eliminating all the sugars and all the processed crap and the oils and all that, is that. And then after that is things like hydrating your skin will improve, like, either having foods that are higher in niacin, like tuna and pork will actually increase the amount of niacin you get in your system, which will, one of the metabolites that will actually be produced in the body is called nicotinamide. Nicotinamide actually has an effect of hydrating the skin, which means that it has like an anti-wrinkle effect. If you want to have it in the sort of the women like less wrinkles, it has an anti-wrinkling effect. That's why they put in the expensive creams and stuff like that. But you can actually just buy a cheap nicotinamide supplement for only a couple of bucks, and you have the same effect. You don't need to buy the expensive supplements. The expensive creams. So that's another thing you can actually do to improve to the hydration of your skin, and also shifting your body away from, trying to train your body by reducing the excessive intake of water that tends to make the body want to. It's a bit like, your metabolic rate. If you eat less, your metabolic rate sort of drops a bit, and it sort of finds a new homeostasis. It's the same thing with if you drink slightly less, which means less deuterium anyway, like the tribal people do, even though they live in arid environments. What it does is the body starts upregulating the antidiuretic hormones to hold on to fluids, but also generates more internal water from your fat stores. So there's an advantage in that. But also that means you get better hydration into the tissue because you're actually trying to maintain a more homeostasis and all that. That also will make you over time, unless, it's warm, when it's really hot and all that, you'll lose from sweat. That's when you'll need more water and, things like salt. But when you're not in that sort of state, then it's going to be less in that regard. So it's an adaptation, actually listening to your body and adjusting and doing things like that. Anyway, but stay clear of the sugar and the oils. That's the definite main one. Invite winning ID. What supplements does your father take every day to have such strong bones in his late 80s? He eats more meat than he used to, but he takes MSM, taurine, he takes choline, he takes, I said MSM, taurine, choline, vitamin D, just 5,000 I use, but primarily in the months of spring, summer, because he's, older. You don't get as much from the sun, so he takes he takes all year round, excluding summer. So he's not taking currently. So 5,000 I use, and because he's got the same gene as me, he does eat more dairy because he has to. Um, but other people can use crustaceans. He does a bit of crustaceans. But those are mainly it. It's pretty much a whole lot of powders that he puts in his yogurt at night. So he puts it in, he puts a bit of yogurt, he mixes it all up, and then he puts the remainder of the yogurt and mixes it all in, so it actually spreads everywhere, and then he basically eats his yogurt in the evening. Because that's when you absorb calcium better in the evening. So he does all that sort of stuff. Has at lunchtime that. That's about it. I don't think I had him on boron for a while, but that was a short-term thing. The 12, 9, 6, blah 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 that I do to normalise hormones and stuff like that. Have I had him on anything else? I did have him for a period of time, for about a couple of years, to beef up because he wasn't eating enough meat. So if you eat enough meat, you should get enough leucine. You should get enough, aminos in your system. So I had him on a bovine supplement, not an isolate, but a complex. So that tends to have, it tends to be more closer to animal based, less factory made. It's more expensive. I did have to pay a bit more for it than your standard powders, and also a leucine supplement. So it was a combination of those. And so he also consumed that with taurine, leucine, and that for a number of years. So that actually reversed his sarcopenia, reversed and increased his muscle mass and his bone density. Uh, so it was those sort of things. It's stuff that I've told you guys for a long time. Obviously, genetically, people respond to the same stuff a bit different. So this is not like this will happen to everyone. But also, because I would have got hit, Dad's more stocky. So and like me, if I eat more protein and all that, I get really wide in the chest, as you can see. My muscles get bigger even without a lot of training, and I build more tissue because of slightly higher Neanderthal component. And I think that has an effect as well, to be honest, So, and I think that has also helped Dad. I can't think of anything else other than that. It's just more meat and those supplements, which is pretty much powders, MSM, taurine, leucine, the bovine stuff, and choline. It's pretty much been that, and vitamin D, and a bit of K2. But he gets most of the K2 now from his diet because he's eating a bit more cheese and stuff like that. So he's getting more of that. So we don't even bother with K2. So that's pretty much it. So there's some bird outside going. Anyway, not the sort that you would be thinking of, young Tracy. Neighbours are fighting. It's not even 7 p.m. yet. God, you got very fun neighbours and free entertainment. So, hey, how are you? What are the steps to preserve? Oh, we've already covered that. You're asking for a second time. Quietens down early, maybe, Tracy. Possibly, Richard. It could be. Uh, it's the food. Oh, okay. They're carboholics, are they? Okay, fair enough. Do you have any nutritional advice on improving T cells naturally? Well, your T cells, your whole immune system actually needs amino acids. So being on a species appropriate diet will help you achieve that sort of stuff. So that's the easy stuff. So just keep that in mind. Vitamin D is really important. So having a good vitamin D status is really important in regulating your T cells and also providing the stem cells that go to the thymus that taurine activates. So a species appropriate diet out in the sun should basically provide you with more T lymphocytes, natural killer cells and naive T cells, which will mean that you'll have a more robust and better, more youthful response. Also, with taurine, it prevents immunosenescence. That means the aging of the immune system. So you end up with less cytokine T cells and more naive ones like young people have. So that's important as well. It's not only it's lifestyle as well that affects stress, can actually age your immune system. Fasting for 3 weeks can actually turn over old immune cells with new immune cells. So, the same autophagy that happens and the same apoptosis that happens in normal cells can happen in immune cells as well. So occasional fasting is important. Shouldn't be sort of, some people are sort of extremists, either too much fasting or no fasting at all. We know who they are. We won't get into that. So, if you want to boost your cells, you can actually take TA1 peptide, which is another peptide that, it's in your thymus. You can take it as a supplement, and that will boost through interleukin-16. It'll actually have like an amplifying effect that then will boost, I haven't done the video yet, boost sort of the T cell proliferation and, differentiation. So you'll get more T cell production. It's a little biohack for people with cancer that have got suppressed immune systems and stuff like that. So anyway, but that's for a future video. But you asked naturally. So really, get out in the sun and eat a species-appropriate diet and get some taurine into you, and you will have a much better immune system. Yeah. I'm glad to see you're enjoying the entertainment, young Tracy. Bravo, Harry Bullet. Oh, thank you. The answer to one of your questions will be taurine. Am I that predictable? Now, if something works, it works. Young Richard. Uh, Priscello, how are you? Hi, Harry. Wonderful New Year. Thank you for being there for us. You're welcome, and Happy New Year to you as well. Sarah, Sarah Kleiner, uses something like a quantum block or quantum energy generator. It's called, I think, brand Leah Q. BS. No idea, mate. Absolutely no idea. Never heard of it. I'll look it up, but no idea. Um, um, I can only think of it. Well, you've got grounding, which has been established to have some benefits. You've got red light therapy that's also been established, but quantum energy, never heard of it. It sounds unlikely, but I don't know. I'm not going to argue against something that I haven't looked into it. Yeah, don't know. I don't think there's anything in that can actually block quantum effects in the universe. Not that I know of, anyway. On the stainless steel composition, I would expect to notice pitting of my stainless bowl after 30 years if the material was reducing leaching. Acid foods with long immersion, maybe tomatoes, etc. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe if something has deteriorated slightly, possibly. Don't know. Oops, don't hit it again. Talking to myself now. Is this going somewhere, young Tracy? Michael, Happy New Year to you as well, mate. DJ Projectors, hello everyone. How are you? I still have massive amounts of floaters despite Carney taurine. Now Bergs comes up with the ancient doctor's recipe, choline, inositol, methionine, lysine. Worth a try? Well, why not? If choline is important as well for the, for bile, for proper bile, and inositol that can be useful. Um, you know, methionine you probably get enough from the meat you eat. Same with lysine and all that. You can give it a try. I would have thought that by now you would have got some better results quicker. You can take something like calcium deglutarate, which can also help, and milk thistle if there's issues where it's not sorting itself out. because it could be also sort of the recycling. It's not recycling because milk thistle will sort of help with the FXR enzyme for some reason. Sometimes some people, it doesn't settle down and it doesn't actually recycle back because you're supposed to recycle about 95%. If you're not recycling as well, that can be an issue. Potentially. Okay. What is a mechanism where non-animal fats, seed oils, lower your cholesterol? Well, there's probably two potential, even though we don't have good research, um, obviously if you're eating saturated fats, there's mixed research. Some research shows that it does elevate it, but that's possibly in some people with certain genetics. In others, it lowers. It doesn't actually do anything. It's sort of very little. Like me, it doesn't really do much. Where in other people who are hyper responders, it does raise it. Okay, so that's one thing. Let's get that out of the way. Polyunsaturated fats seem, because of the way they are oxidized and the way they're utilized through certain pathways, they're not used for the purposes of producing more cholesterol. They just oxidize at the mitochondrial level. So you tend to actually then produce less in that regard. And then obviously the other thing is there is a belief out there that also potentially certain compounds, plant compounds inside tends to also inhibit that process. It's a mixed research on that part. It's not quite clear whether certain plant compounds have this effect. I've actually found contrary. I've actually done a video because Paul Mason actually was arguing that point, and I sort of made a video showing that it's not exactly like that. So, yeah. But having more animal foods, it's really has less to do with the animal, less to do with, it's more to do with what you're eating. People who are eating a low carb diet are going to get less sugar in the system. So all they'll be exporting is a certain amount of glycogen just to keep the brain and the muscles with their requirements. And so the only other, and that's when you actually get this so-called peripheral, what they call insulin resistance, peripheral insulin resistance. The low carb people say it's not unhealthy. It's not unhealthy. It really isn't that. It's basically that the body actually goes and says, I'm getting this sort of energy flux into the system, so I'm getting these precursors. I'm not getting any glucose. I'm just getting fatty acids. And it goes, okay, I need to break down those fats, produce fatty acids, and use them to oxidize and produce ATP in the mitochondria. Get the backbone, which is the glycerol backbone, and take that and turn it into glucose through gluconeogenesis. And if I don't have enough and my needs, because I'm exercising or whatever, my needs are slightly high, I can also use some of the amino acids, like alanine in particular, which are gluconeogenic amino acids, to produce some additional sugar that I may need for my muscles in particular. Because at the basal level, you get enough if you're just sitting around not doing much for your muscles and your brain. Okay? But if you're physically active, you'll need a bit more, which is important. So to keep that in mind, that's what will happen. But and as a consequence, what's left? Well, the only fuel that's left is the stuff coming in. And when that finishes, the stuff in your fat cells. That goes to the liver from the fat cells. And when it goes to the liver, it gets exported out as VLDL, which turns into LDL. So you get more LDL. You don't get more cholesterol. What you're actually getting is more lipoproteins. And all lipoproteins, when they get exported out of the liver, they have a lot of triglycerides and a bit of cholesterol. As they go around the body, they reduce the amount, and they shrink from VLDL to IDL, intermediate lipoproteins, to LDL, low-density lipoproteins that don't have a lot of fat in them, but they have a lot of the remaining cholesterol. And they don't also have a lot of the fat-soluble vitamins anymore because that's all already been given, distributed. And so you end up with more trucks. Just think, if I'm eating more fat, I'm basically just going to have a lot of, and sugar, I'm just going to have a lot of other trucks, other stuff providing the energy. So if I eat sugar, I'm getting enough energy. I don't need to basically export a lot of, I'll export a lot of triglycerides, which means that those fats, the excess fat, that's just generated. This is why your triglycerides go up. Your triglyceride levels go up because you can't use it. You're not using it. You're storing away excess sugar. That's why your triggers go up on a high sugar diet or a mixed diet or whatever. But on a low carb diet, it's the opposite. You export VLDL, which has got triglycerides, but it's taken up by the body so quickly, the energy, because you've got no other energy, you end up with more LDL. That's the difference. It's the energy substrates in the trucks that are moving around. Those trucks shrink into another truck form. You're getting less in between meals, less of the other stuff coming in chylomicrons, and especially with certain genetics, you're taking up those trucks quicker into the liver and exporting them out as VLDL. So you end up with higher. So I've got an ApoE of 3.3, so I'll export less trucks. I'll have more circulating chylomicrons, which will go to the fat cells, come back, move around the body, and then eventually get uptaken by the liver. And eventually I'll have certain LDL emerge. But somebody who is an ApoE 4.4 will suck them in really fast. And somebody who's basically not eating any sugar whatsoever, like when you're fasting, your LDL goes through the roof. Everyone's LDL goes through the roof because that's your only energy source. So if you take out the fractions, that's why they tell you when you go to fast, they only fast for a certain amount of hours. And if you fast too long, like over 15 hours or whatever, the information is useless to you because you're going to have very high LDL. Everybody will. Got it? So it's irrelevant. We're only interested if LDL is oxidized, that's damaged because you've taken in seed oils and crap like that. Not about where the LDL is. The LDL is irrelevant. If you're eating more sugar, you need less, LDL in circulation to provide energy for the body because you're using sugar, you're not using fat. If you're using more fat, you're going to have more boats or more vessels or more trucks that are going to be moving around, moving that energy, that fat energy, to all these mitochondria and all these cells around the body. So you're going to have more. That's why low carb diet increases LDL. A low fat diet reduces them. It's just different trucks with different substrates. Who cares? It's really, at the end of the day, Michael, what are we putting in our mitochondria? Sugar or fat? Fat is low in deuterium, which does less damage, oxidative stress, and damage to the mitochondria. So you end up with mitochondria that are healthy for longer, you live longer, or like the Messiah, 120 odd years, or you basically, if you survive childhood diseases and other things like that. But for the rest of us, if we put high deuterium foods like seed oils or refined sugars, we're going to do more damage to our mitochondria, and we're possibly going to succumb then from these processed foods that are very high in deuterium to earlier cancers because more damaged mitochondria, less energy, Warburg effect. That means fermentation in the presence of oxygen, because you're still breathing in. So you got to think of it in a more holistic way. This sort of reductionist way, oh, cholesterol, this or that, that's just nonsense. If you're oxidizing the lipoproteins with seed oils and damaging them, or glycating them and damaging their surface and causing them to stick on the endothelium and cause problems because you're eating inappropriate foods, that's when they're a problem. When you're not doing that, they're not a problem. It's like trucks. If I run trucks on a nice, beautiful road, not an issue. But if I run trucks through a road that is actually just full of water and mud and stuff like that, they're likely to slip off that road, or likely to and crash on the side, or likely to basically go down the river. Same trucks, different environment. Think of the seed oil like all that water and that mud. Toxic. With aldehydes, with primary, secondary oxidative products, doing a whole lot of damage inside the body. And all that sugar, that refined sugar, causing all glycation stickiness. So things are sticking all over the place and causing all sorts of derangements to lipids and to cell membranes. That's the things that really cause a disease, and have for the last 100-odd years. If you go before early 20th century, before oils existed, or a whole lot of refined sugars to the large extent, you don't see cancer or cardiovascular disease. The moment after the Great Depression and the 30s onwards, when people couldn't afford animal foods and were very poor and started using more and more of these oils and these refined, even more of the refined sugars. But oils was the big one, because the level of sugar that was in the system wasn't that high. We didn't see this dramatic rise in diabetes. That happened later on after the Second World War. Actually, it happened after the low-fat sort of craze, when sugar was put on steroids. Then we sort of started seeing all these other conditions emerge. But before that, right up to the 80s and 70s, the only thing that was actually introduced into the food supply was seed oils. And that was toxic to the mitochondria from the deuterium side, damaging the nanomotors by putting inside there rather than protons, because everything has a carbon backbone, and on that is nitrogens and oxygen and hydrogen ions. They get stripped off. That carbon can be used as a backbone for certain structures in the body, and what is not needed, excess, is combined with oxygen to create CO2, and you breathe it out. Okay? And that your waste product is basically the plant's sort of food. They give you back oxygen. So that's the nice cycle of life, in terms of gas exchanges in the environment and us and other animals and stuff like that. Don't listen to the crackpots on that level. And then on the other side, if you've got low deuterium, so you've got hydrogens, ions, there's two stable forms, H1 and H2. H2 is also called deuterium. At its nucleus, it has a neutron and a proton. H1, your stock standard hydrogen, only has a proton. And those pumps in the electron chain, so you strip off the electron, you use the electron to power those pumps push through into these folds inside the mitochondria. They push in protons. Those protons rush through this little nanomotor called ATPase, and that produces the ATP that provides the energy currency for the cell to basically do a lot of work. Okay? Now, deuterium has that neutron. That neutron is bigger, double the weight, and if it gets into that nanomotor as a few neutrons, it slows rather than being at 9,000 RPMs, it could drop it down to 6,000 or 5,000 or 4,000. The less energy you produce, because you produce the same weight of energy as your whole body. So you need part of that energy to to just keep yourself going, for the cells to function, the cells to clean up themselves, and then the rest of it to power a whole lot of other systems that are producing enzymes and all that. And then some of that also is required to heal. That means there's organelles that take that and repair tissue. If these organelles don't get enough of this energy, well, you're going to get less repair. And as mitochondrial, as you get a reduction in the production of ATP as you get older, because we do more damage, because we're putting more of these neutrons. I'm really explaining in a very simplistic way quantum biological processes that are happening. It's a bit more complex than that, but in a very simplified way. You can actually, if you put too many, you can bust those motors. That means your mitochondria, or what is called the redox potential, can drop dramatically, and then you produce less ATP or very little. That's when you actually start going into a senescent damaged cell. You can't heal it, and then eventually you could go, if it's not killed off by a strong immune system, like having T lymphocytes that's sufficient, then what will happen is your body, have things too close. What will happen is those cells could go cancerous as well. It may explain why, because people are consuming far too many of the seed oils and refined sugars, which are also high in deuterium. But obviously the refined oils are the worst because they are double. It's not enough that they've got all these other byproducts that actually cause inflammation and damage and, a lot of oxidation in the body. But on top of that, they also are the wrong type of fat to get into the mitochondria to generate ATP energy, or Gibbs free energy, as Bart would say. Okay. But as I remind him, in a closed system. Anyway, it's a bit more complicated. Still, that's what gets blown off. But anyway, we won't go into quantum biology, ATP. Okay. So he could argue it or say it slightly different, a bit more nuanced, is what my argument is. But anyway, I'm not going to go into it. He would agree with me. Now, as far as these neutrons that are going through, if too many of them go through, they're going to bust the motor. And that's declining energy and aging more rapidly and getting disease and everything else. So, that's the real problem, not cholesterol. A third of your cells are made up of cholesterol, if not more, depending on which cells and what they do. Your immune system requires cholesterol. When you get a disease, your LDL drops through the floor. So if you don't have high cholesterol, you can't heal as well, and you can't fight off disease as well. And possibly because a lot of people in America in particular are on statins on a very low cholesterol diet, it probably explains why more deaths happen in the COVID years compared to other countries. If you take a look, statins to deaths from respiratory infections, that means flu or COVID or whatever, common cold, the US and countries that are bigger statin users have higher rates of death. It's an association, but in my book, it's because we know from the books of physiology, it's not me saying it, the books of physiology say that LDL is required by the immune system to fight off pathogens, viruses, disease, and all that. And we know that when we look at people who are sick, their LDL drops through the floor. It's not accidental, So if it wasn't used by the immune system, then it wouldn't drop, it'd stay where it is. So we know it's very critically important. So the crackpots are basically because we consume seed oils and we damage the cell surface of lipoproteins, because as VLDL goes into the cells, IDL goes into the cells, they all shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink. You got it? But as they're shrinking and shrinking, they will turn all eventually into LDL. But as they are also moving through the bloodstream as VLDL, as IDL, until they become to the size of low-density lipoprotein, they're smaller, they're circulating for many hours, moving stuff around. Now, if they're moving through the bloodstream, into cells and out of cells and back into the bloodstream, and you're consuming a lot of sugar and a lot of seed oils, what are you doing? You're glycating those trucks that are moving energy around, fats around. And the other thing is not only fats, cholesterol, and fat-soluble vitamins. So you're damaging those, and then on top of that, you're also, damaging their surface. You're causing them damage, and then you're deranging them, and then they're not working properly. So it's like basically me running into a truck and damaging it, and then accusing the truck of being bad for the city after I took a sledgehammer to it and damaged it. Well, there's nothing wrong with the truck. The truck now is damaged and may not work, but that's because I damaged it. I took a sledgehammer to it. Well, that's what seed oils and refined sugars are doing, too much of it. They're going to do too much damage, and then it won't work properly. And then even the receptor site may be damaged, and then it won't be taken up by the liver to be recycled. And then it remains in circulation. It could be then it becomes very oxidized and damaged, and then it starts becoming very reactive on the surfaces of your blood vessels and stuff like that. See the process? Well, the process starts from an inflammatory process from inappropriate foods that then start damaging the endothelium, the LDL, and all these things. And that's the process of slowly creating inflammation and damage, oxidation, all these sort of things. So cholesterol isn't the problem. It's what we do to it from inappropriate eating and lifestyles. Anyway, I think that was a very comprehensive explanation. What is that? Is that a boot? Anyway, I'm not going to. Michaela had a baby. Yes, I heard. Yes. Anyway, ITX, Harry, nutritional support for mold illness. Well, pretty much carnivore diet is all you need for as far as the nutrition goes. But then you have to fix up the mold. I mean, guys, you can't live in a moldy environment. You got to fix it. So you have to clean it, get somebody in that knows what they're doing, or if it's small areas, then put a mask on, get the right stuff. Check out a few YouTube channels that people show you how to clean it and do it properly if you can. If you're not capable and it's like all in the wall and it's really, really bad and it needs for a professional to come in and strip it back, all of it, that's a different question altogether. But if you've been exposed, obviously, you're going to have a lot of problems. Now, you want to detox, and obviously choline, taurine really help in order that detox. Sort of calcium deglutarate is really important because what calcium deglutarate does, it helps with detoxification, but also, and see, your primary and secondary, your liver detox pathways, they actually require a lot of amino acids. There's a lot of amino acids that play a role in detoxification. So carnivore diet is required to get enough amino acids. That's one. And then you need things like choline and taurine, and also, which is important, is this calcium deglutarate. The reason for that is because you'll excrete a lot of that stuff out of the bile, but there are some bacteria in your gut that can actually cause reabsorption. So can actually, this sort of structure that is created, it's bound into bile salts to be pushed out of the actual, out of the colon and pooped. But these bacteria in the colon can actually break down, and then you can actually cause some level of reabsorption. To prevent that, calcium D-glutarate inhibits and prevents those bacteria from doing that, one. And also helps, it supports additionally the detox pathways. So it's like a double whammy. So calcium D-glutarate. Anyway. Um, okay. And that goes for her as well. Another salt question. How is salt sodium important for bone strength? Well, it's a mineral that's required. I do have a video that will discuss boron, sodium, a number of the other minerals, and some of the actual stuff. And I don't want to give too much away because that is a video that I want to make that will cover a number of this and my arguments against. So I'm not going to answer that completely now for that reason, because I do want to make that comprehensive video down the track, and I don't want anybody else, because it's very nuanced on a number of levels, and I don't want other people to basically beat me to the chase. I do have competition, my dear. So I will expect a video in the next couple of months. Anyway, L-reuteri for H. pylori, it does help in suppressing it, but it doesn't eliminate it. Okay? So it is something that I actually use when a lot of people got not only H. pylori, but a lot of bacterial overgrowth and a lot of problematic bacteria. So that's where I use it in those sort of protocols for that purpose. So I will be upgrading because I haven't actually covered D-mannose and calcium D-glutarate and all that in any video. And so I will be upgrading my protocols and actually explaining the nuancing and sort of to make them a bit more potent. I talk about them, but yeah, it does help as well for H. pylori, for Candida, and a number of other pathogenic bacteria as well. So it does lower them. So it does have some benefits. It's the reason why we get coated by a number of these lactobacillus as we come out of the birth canal. So, they're very important. And then we use antibiotics for decades to destroy as much as possible of these important lactobacillus. Yeah, anyway, that's another story. Anyway, have you seen the study name, antioxidant activity, and tocotrienol-rich factions in fish oil and structural lipid-based infant formula emulsion? Sorry. No, I haven't. Well, palm oil is a good thing for, you've probably heard me that in the past, people that have got stored seed oils and are clearing them out and turning over a decade or whatever and trying to deal with them and sort of stabilize those with the vitamin E complex. It's usually the Jarrow one, the Toco, which is a palm oil based with tocotrienols and just a low dose of tocopherol. So it's the one that I usually recommend for people that are trying to deal with sort of oxidative stress in that regard, or long-term turnover and dealing with oxidative stress as they are transitioning over a few years to deal with those sort of issues. But for specific formulas and all that, I've looked at some of that stuff years ago. Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at it carefully and see exactly what it's trying to say and what it's trying to argue, and see whether it's whether there's any value in it, whether it's making any good points or whether it's sort of making some poor points. I don't know. I haven't seen it, so. But I will, Pavel, I will look into it at some stage. Hold on, where are you? Oh, you are. So I've got the panel up here to be able to see what new stuff is as I'm going through. So I've got a pop out here. So I just copy that. And I'll open up a page, notepad, and I'll paste it in there. And I'll take a look at it when I get a chance this week. And I'm back to the bottom. And just check it out and see. Yes, just reminding people that we are on the last hour. So if you've got any really important questions you need to ask, because you won't see me for another fortnight. Next week, I've got things to do, socialising that is, and also to apply for some positions as well. So I need to start working on. I'll be doing a bit this week, working on my criterias and answering a whole lot of things to submit for new positions. But anyway, because I'm acting at a higher level, but I need to, the position's been advertised, so I need to actually put in for it as well. Yeah. Okay, so Q. That was yep. Oops. I'll just click through, until I find another question. I like just putting people's stuff on there just so, you get to see your stuff in lights, so to speak. And I do the same thing with what's my videos, just lower options. Yep. Yeah, look, it's just I have to do that, otherwise it just becomes frustrating, and that's not the purpose of stuff. Harry, I bought an expensive version of StreamYard to pump out 1080p. It works okay, but I wouldn't do recordings on it. The customization is poor. Yeah, look, I've actually got new software, and I've got I did buy some software specifically because it's actually got. That's the other thing. I will have to go through that software because it's got some advanced features, and I'm just using the simple stuff to sort of like I'll do like a video with multiple stuff, and then I'll cut it all up, and then I'll try and actually normalize the audio and all that sort of stuff, and then post it. But it does have some advanced features. You can actually have little colourful things on the screen and all sorts of things. I don't know whether it's a gimmicky thing. I don't know whether it's a necessity. I'll probably do it at some stage. I'll probably get bored after from doing it. But it does have a number of features, and I need to sort of play around with it a bit just to just learn to do some advanced things, see what I can sort of get out. Oh, well, Harry's about to game all my Bitcoin with RTX. It's only a 450, so it's one of the lower sort of levels, but it's still. I actually got it. It's there's a company down here in Tasmania. It's actually all over Australia, and what they do is I don't want to give too much away. But Harvey Norman has this policy where they actually, in November, they actually have like these discounts, big discounts. They do it on purpose just to suck people in, and then they put the prices back up after a couple of weeks, 2 weeks or whatever. I know it always happens, and I'm always waiting to try and get discounts. Well, this where JB Hi-Fi and all the others may lower it by $300 or $200 when they have their discounting little thing. This company took this laptop, which was $2,200, and knocked it down by $800 to $1,400. So we're talking about big friggin' savings. And so when I saw it, went, yep, I'm buying it immediately. And that's what I did. It's a Nitro V15. And if you check, it's, you know, pretty much because it's an i7. So it's not an i3 or an i5, it's an i7. i7 with an RTX 450. And they usually retail over $2,000, so 2,200. But I always know that every single year they do that. And normally, because what happens is normally the new version that comes out in December will actually, because they're trying to get rid of all the old stock and the new stock that comes out, and also get people, oh, there's discounts, and people go in and, if they don't find it, they may buy a more expensive one. It's the old marketing trick. You do it for short term to try and get a bit of activity in the sales sort of arena. And so, but when you compare, they actually brought the new one out, and it's identical specs, identical, because of the supply chain. And we still haven't moved. Now we're still at that 5 nanometer. We still haven't moved to the 3. That's supposed to happen next year, maybe. The question is maybe. There's a question mark. And because of the supply chain and the cost at the moment and all this, it's really slowed down how quickly the foundries have been able to miniaturize the circuitry. So we're still on the old chips. Even the new models that came out, same sort of chipset, same sort of configuration. All I go, wow! I just say, because normally you get just a slight upgrade, a few improvements here and then. I go, who cares? Last year's model, no differences, just minor differences, and I'm saving myself quite a bit of money. This time, not only am I saving quite a bit of money, but it's identical practically because of the supply chain and all that. And so I'm going, wow, now aren't I a winner? But that's because I know the market and all that sort of stuff, and I keep an eye on it and all that. So, and I know how some of these companies operate and sell. Years ago when I was younger, this was many a moons ago, I used to get like jacks because I used to do structured cabling, jacks for $1 the plate and $1 the actual RG sort of plug. So whether it was for telecommunications or whether it was computers or some of the optical stuff or some of the what's the hybrid one? I can't remember now. It's the coaxial cable. And I used to get those jacks for about $1.10, $1.50 or whatever. So it cost me at most about $3 from PC Range in South Australia. They used to get container loads coming in. And so I had a wholesale account with them at the time. And in the city, this is back, we're talking about a couple of decades back now, okay? So we're talking about 2000s, before wireless became very, pervasive. And you'd be paying like $15, or the cheapest like wholesale from electrical stores would be something like, $10 or whatever, still 5 times more. So I had really good margins at the time. So, because before I got into cartography, became a cartographer, I was in IT. That's where I originally started, many a moons back in the late 80s, early 90s. Very long time ago, and I was in my 20s at the time, and I was making shitloads of money, I can tell you. Far more than I'm making now in price purchasing power in comparison to which helped because it saved me a lot of money to be able to get things and build up for homes and for investments and all sorts of things. So, but yeah, it was much easier to make money back then, I can tell you. Much harder now, but anyway, probably, but also my motivation isn't that anymore to a large extent. But yeah. Oh, don't forget the thumb thing, nice folks. Yes, yes, yeah. The beep, 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 like. Don't forget to like Uncle Harry. Why are supplements concentrated with deuterium? Because of the processing. Anything you process, the deuterium levels go up. Now, obviously, protein you don't generally oxidize, so it's less of an issue. And most supplements are going to have very minute amounts, so again, it's less of an issue. The things that are really going to put a lot of deuterium in are basically refined sugars if you're having them in large amounts, or refined oils if you're having them in large amounts. So the small amount that's in most supplements is pretty much irrelevant, excluding proteins, protein isolates and all that. So protein isolate will have more, because it's more processed than a concentrate. So a protein concentrate, because what I gave my father, has less deuterium because it's less processed. Simple as that. So it's the level of processing, and because they actually are taking a lot of the, when they process it, you lose a lot of your stock standard hydrogen ions, and you end up adding through the process more deuterium ions. It just is everything like that with all processed food. All processed food will have higher deuterium levels than even. So if you were to get like a Snickers bar, the same amount of glucose, like from a potato, and the Snickers bar is going to have more deuterium than the potato. Got it? So the more processed, you actually, because of that heating process and all that, you tend to lose a lot of that other water that's in that sort of stuff, and you end up concentrating the deuterium ions in the actual stuff. You know, it happens on steroids when you actually, because it goes through all these industrial processes to an oil refinery, seed oils, and you can like double the amount. So you don't just increase it by a certain amount, you double it. So it's something like, it can be as high as 255 parts per million, where sugar can be anywhere between 100 and, most sugars 140 odd to 160 odd. Got it? So, and proteins can be around about the 130 to 140 odd, in that mid range, depending on the protein source and stuff like that and whatever. So, pork meat has slightly more, and beef has slightly less than meat part. But the fat is the other way. The fat of pork is much lower. So overall, pork with meat and fat is going to be lower than beef and fat. So those are the variations. What else? Something else that I wanted to say. Anyway, so yeah, it's just the industrial process. So you can actually see, seed oils 255 is just astronomical, astronomically high and dangerous. So it's just beyond the point. So once you get above, see, the safe zone is 100 to 130. Once you get above 180, that's when you start. It's the, your body at that stage is, even a young person, it's beyond the point of no return. So a young person can cope with 160, like refined sugars, 160 parts per million. They've got a lot of mitochondrial density, and they've got more ATP that they produce to be able to clear out, reduce the amount of deuterium. As you do more damage, because even they do small amount of damage, and as they get to middle age or whatever, and mitochondrial density drops a bit because of all the seed oils in primarily, but also some of the sugars that cause some damage. It's just slower. You end up then, if you don't reduce these things, you'll end up into cancer, into more damage, and all these sort of things, because you're going to cause you're going to accelerate the mitochondrial damage. So I'm not a big fan. I don't use supplements. I had to use that because my dad was sarcopenic and all that. But at the same time, I also made sure that he got more fat and did a bit of deuterium depletion as well. So I did a number of other things together to mitigate, because I was trying to do two things at once. I was trying to reduce his deuterium levels while at the same time trying to increase his protein intake to fix, But at the same time, as long as you're getting enough energy in the system, you're going to have less issues about worrying about that the 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 protein actually being oxidized. It's not going to happen unless you've really got poor mitochondria, and then that. But then, that's a different issue altogether. But generally, we don't oxidize protein. We oxidize glycerol backbone from from the fats, or fats or sugar. That's what the body. It's only when it runs out of everything then it will go to proteins. Okay, so it primarily uses proteins more to produce glucose than to produce. So it's less of an issue. I wouldn't worry too much. So we don't want zero. We don't want very. This is why I don't like people going too low on the deuterium side, because it's still required for the collagen structures and your bones. The rigidity still required. We just don't want it in the mitochondria. That's the difference. And we don't want to overload the system. So we want to allow the enzymes in the Krebs cycle to be able to go, okay, enzymatically, I'll remove that deuterium ion, and I'll place in a hydrogen ion, and I'll push that back into the cytosol. Cytosol is that area inside the cell around the nucleus. Okay, so I'll push that stuff back in there, and that's what it's supposed to do. But if you overload it with a lot of seed oils and stuff like that, then there's an enzymatic bottleneck. Your enzymes can only do so much deuterium depletion. Beyond a certain point, you will get deuterium flowing through into the matrix in that middle part of the mitochondria, and then getting pumped in the inner mitochondrial membrane, which is where the folds are on the other side. And then in those little folds is where the protons and unfortunately some neutrons will push against at the base of it, where the little nanomotors are spinning, and they'll come out, and that comes back out into the matrix, and it produces ATP as it comes out, because the flow of protons is what actually gets that whole thing. It's like water, think of it, to rotate. And as it rotates and spins, it's actually able to take an ADP, stick a phosphate on, and shoot out an ATP, adenosine diphosphate to adenosine triphosphate. It adds an additional phosphate. And that phosphate then gets released, and that's your ATP. And that ATP then can go to little organelles and stuff like that, or it can go into supporting the phosphocreatine cycle, which then supports at the filaments. This is in the muscle tissue, and only in the muscle tissue primarily where this is happening, to basically provide for those contractile effects with a bit of glucose. But anyway, that's for another day, muscle energetics. But yes, generally speaking, we shouldn't worry about just like vitamin D and stuff like that, all those supplements, very little. But I'm more concerned about people being underweight, where they will oxidize proteins, and they're taking a lot of powders, and they're doing a lot of lean protein, lean meats and stuff like that. The typical extreme bodybuilder is more that sort of thing that happens. Reminds me of insulin overshooting and causing obese people to store and be hungry. Yes, yeah. Especially when your blood sugar is doing this and a whole lot of snacking in between. Yes, yeah. It all has to do, signaling is signaling. There's signaling. It depends where insulin is signaling. Is it signaling to the adipose tissue, or is insulin signaling to the muscles? It's not the same. And mTOR can actually be signaling at the adipose tissue, but in a low carbohydrate state with upregulated, because you've got the upregulation of hormone sensitive lipase, so you're oxidizing fat and releasing fat to be oxidized at the mitochondria, but you still have an insulin to glucagon ratio of 1.3. Remember, glucagon is still temping down insulin. And so insulin signaling is just enough for protein synthesis, but not enough sufficient to send a signal to suppress hormone-sensitive lipase and put you into fat storage. So when, even at 4-to-1, like we're on a potato diet, still not enough. Still enough glucagon to temper down insulin so it doesn't overshoot. That's the low fat, but that eventually has other issues with it, which is you end up like a malnourished vegan because it's very poor in other things, other nutrition. But, same sort of, concept is happening here. And on the, if you have a sad diet, a combo of crap, fructose, jellies and all sorts of, you can actually get having one of those happy meals, you can actually get anywhere between 50 odd up to 7, depending on all the stuff that you eat. So you can actually go to McDonald's, have like a burger, and you may end up with an insulin to glucagon of 20-to-1. And then you may have, cakes and sweets and sodas and all this sort of stuff. And potentially you can push it up to 70-to-1. At that level, the blockading level and this is what most people do on a sad diet and yo-yo and eating sugar all day long. They just literally blockade the ability to, to release, fat because of the high insulin and low glucagon. And so that sends a signal to the fat cells, store, don't release because of the high insulin signaling, because it's excessive. And as a consequence, what happens? Well, hypoglycemia. But it won't happen in a low carbohydrate state because insulin is fairly low and you've got another energy source that is made available via hormone sensitive lipase. So it's a great system if you activate it in the right way. Anyway, if I remember correctly, at that time, Bart was drinking a lot of beer. He had the obvious beer belly. That's true. Of course, he lost it when he stopped drinking. But it wasn't only that. He also increased his intake to force his metabolic rate up and then cut, which is fasting. And so, because many people can stop beer and just eat the same amount of food and you won't see a dramatic drop in weight. So that's not the only reason. It helps because it eliminates a key problem of increasing fat production in the liver. Cheers, mate. Enjoy the fireworks. 9. Yeah, and not yet. The fireworks haven't started yet. They're probably going to have I may go down. I'm thinking about going down and actually just checking out the fireworks as well. So, we've got about half an hour to go, and in about half an hour, so when it goes to it's nearly 9 o'clock, so 9:30, I'm pulling the pin, and then you could all race away in Aussie land to check out the fireworks and stuff like that, and you're welcome. Yes, that guy that we'll talk about. Yep, he did. Okay. I'll be back later. Fair enough. You got half an hour. Just letting you know. Yeah, that was the Joe. Yes. Tellboy. Hi, Harry. Any thoughts on Tudka? Well, Tudka is is a sort of like a metabolite of taurine. So it has similar effects, but it doesn't have the all taurine has. It's more with the gallbladder, the liver. It works in a lot of that sort of stuff more as a metabolite. So it can be useful for gallbladder issues in that regard. With some people, it's a bit strange. It can have some sort of downside as well. So that's why I don't recommend it. There are specific people that I recommend it to when they ask me, Harry, I've got these and these symptoms. This doesn't seem to be doing, then I may recommend it for specific circumstances, but I don't recommend it like blindly to everyone. So I'm a bit careful about that. So I would stick to taurine and let the body regulate these sort of things. It will produce TUDCA to the level that it requires, and I usually leave it at that and don't push it anymore. It's in some rare circumstances where I do recommend it for certain ailments and all that. So we'll move on because we've only got half an hour. I can't waffle as much as I usually do, as Tracy would know. It's said when you look around and observe how much sarcopenia there is in us. Yeah, I know. Look, it's really bad. I mean, the Maasai. I did that video on the Maasai. When the elderly get sick, they give them more protein. Well, you're actually producing more enzymes. You need to support your detox pathways. You need all this sort of stuff. You need more amino acids. Simple as that. So it's crazy and criminal what we do to our elderly. Little stuff. How are you? And Happy New Year to you as well. Yes, taurine. That stuff. Whenever I hear choline, I think eat more eggs. Exactly. Eggs are a great, great source of the stuff. Why are deeper paper cuts? Why are deeper paper cuts so difficult to close up? Is hold on. Nothing to do with deficiency of like BPC 157 is produced in the stomach and gut. Okay, so let's just make that clear. Primarily in those tissue types. Can moisture enhance hematoxia or stem cells, fat, omega-3s, topical glutamine, grounding? What's the bottleneck? It could be genetics. Some people have different clotting. Some people have very good clotting capabilities. Now, there are, obviously, if you're consuming a lot of omega-3s, I don't know what you're doing. So if you're doing that, what's your name? Dectic. If you're consuming, I hope I pronounced that right, that could be your problem. If you're not, you may have. There's some people that have got genetics, like there are people that clot very easily, and then there are people that have clotting issues. So you could have one of those issues, and usually those people because they usually have varicose veins and many other things like that as well. So they tend to have more of that sort of stuff, and that can be genetic based, which is really hard to deal with in that regard. It's something I'm investigating, let's put it that way. Now, BPC 157 can help as a supplement for those things, but it also isn't an entire panacea with some genetics. So it's something that I'm investigating at the moment and trying to come up with the best protocol for that. And I will be making a video sometime this year. When exactly, I don't know. It'll actually depend. I like to be certain that I've covered something. I haven't missed anything, because I've done that a couple of times. It's very rare for me to do that, to slip up, but I have. I'm human after all, but I don't like giving people incorrect information. It's not how people feel. Most people go, yeah, fine, Harry. Everybody makes mistakes. it annoys me because I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So it annoys me than other people. Let's put it that way. So I'm investigating the best way to basically improve clotting factors for those people with those specific genetics. Anyway, solution, move up the corporate ladder so others get the the paper cuts on your behalf. Richard, I like your thinking. Uh, Sarah, how are you? Happy New Year, Harry. It is Murray's River salt. That's it. Murray's River salt that you use. Precisely. That is exactly it. Talk about a brain. I must be brain fogged. I must have had a vegetable somewhere. I sneaked a vegetable in. Yes, it is exactly that. Murray River, you know. I knew it was a river salt, but I'm trying to remember the name. How awful is that? You use it for months and months. You don't even, you're sort of the whole brand. It's just like the image. You remember the image, you don't even remember the name on the damn box. Anyway, but it's really nice. And because it's, you know, it doesn't have any heavy metals, so it doesn't have any sort of really funny taste. It's got a it's got a really nice mineral profile, and it has a sweet taste, a sweetish. It's not sweet exactly, but and it just melts in your mouth. It's one of those really soft um, river salts that our traditional ancestors would have used in the past. So it's really nice. Let's put it that way. So that's the one that I do use, and I enjoy quite a bit. Uh, just gives meat a much nicer flavour than your regular salt. Anyway, yeah, that's the hypothesis, and I've already made a video on arguing that. So there is a video on that. If Scotty would feel like grabbing the video on the Paul Mason thing, I would really appreciate it. But that's okay, you know. Yes, I know the the bacon and eggs thing, the beef bacon and egg. Yes, and taurine at the end. Yes, just because I got caught out before. All you people with your damn acronyms, just to confuse me. Uh, you should. I think even her husband is. She's not around at the moment, so I can get away with a bit. And by the time she comes back, it'll be all over. She won't be able to say anything. Uh, uh, Harry, I would love to see you analyse Brian Johnson's supplement biohack stack. It's on his web, so under blueprint. Okay. Where is it? Okay, let me highlight that, and I will say that. Thanks, Scotty. That's the video that Scotty's put up, and I'm going to add that question as well. So, anyway, where was I? Yep. Even a fake one. Who, me? I'm using Power Director Ultimate Harrier. I'd happily edit your next video for you if you like. Oh, no, that's okay. Thanks. I'm more than capable of doing it myself. Don't worry. But appreciate the offer. It's just, the way I would do it is the way I wanted to do it. You know what I mean? It's sort of like a personal touch. Exactly cut it the way I want it and all that. which is because I've had some other people in the past and they didn't cut it the way I wanted it and all that. No offense, but I do appreciate the offer. Thank you. But at the same time, I like to do my own sort of stuff my way. Um, 6 hours till fireworks. No. 3 hours for us, 3 hours. Well, less than 3 hours. 2 hours and 51 minutes. You're further west. That's why. So, you watch MLID? No idea. Acronyms, guys, acronyms. NESRA? Acronyms don't help me at all because I'm an older person. We get fireworks first in New Zealand. You do, Johnny. You definitely do. You do. Way before us. What am I doing? What is the way animal-based eating helps with glucose 6-phosphate enzyme deficiency? That's a long thing that I will be covering that in a video because there are a number of conditions on that, Billy the Kid. And I've talked about in the past on other live streams, and at the time I spent about 20 odd minutes. That would eat completely into the rest of my time, as you can understand. So I will be making a video on that enzyme deficiency and some of the biohacks. I don't want to give too much away at the moment because I want to make the video, but do expect a video in the new year on that specific subject. So I'm not going to copy that because I already have a video in the works for it to happen. I do occasionally. We do have competition, remember, Billy the Kid out there? My neighbour's already waving Happy New Year over the fence, got music cranked. Oh, that's a bit early. It's only 11 for you. They're 2 hours ahead of us, New Zealanders. God, have they lost sense of their time? Maybe. Potentially. Bart is surely a few beers in right now. Yeah, probably. Michael, thanks, Harry, for a wonderful comprehensive answer to the seed oil question. I'm a fan of Dr. Malcolm Kenrick. So got here where you are coming from completely. Cheers. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on. That's just a comment from Scotty. Oh, DC, just noticed you. Yeah, thanks, DC. All the best and Happy New Year to you. And yeah, appreciate it. Deficiency moment earlier was Jake and asked if peptides play an important role. Yeah, look, we produce a lot of these peptides in our body. For some conditions, I do have future videos to cover all of these peptides on like TA1 for to increase via the signaling of interleukin 16 to increase T cells proliferation. So people that have got suppressed immune systems and all that. So there's a lot of stuff that I want to do this year on peptides and stuff like that. So yeah, but that needs to be covered properly. Question and answer, these sort of things, very require too much time, and we've only got, close to 17 minutes. So I do need to get through other things. Yeah, fine. Brag as much as you like, Johnny. God. Look at the Kiwis going. Kiwi magic. We celebrate earlier than you, Aussies. Grow up. God. God, can you just send them a meteor down there to sort of sort them out? Just kidding. One of my favourite old persons, Harry, oh God, Moore's Law is dead, is a great source for keeping up with PC hardware and all the cool engineering details. Yes, yes. Well, next year they're talking about potentially going there, and a couple of probably 2025, maybe some are saying. I think it's really hard to get to one 1 nanometer. And the reason for that is because the heat, because it's nearly at about 1 nanometer. You're talking about the sort of the size of an atom. It's really hard to get at that without getting those shearing forces of the fields that are generated between the the atoms, the sort of forces that are produced. So that's where the biggest problem lies. Boron, maybe, maybe an option, because boron, what happens with boron, unlike with silicon and gallium arsenide, the difference is these ones heat up. Boron does the exact opposite. It cools down. So the more you try to push in, like, and trying to push in sort of electrical power into a if they find a way to fabricate boron down to the 1 nanometer, whatever, without the crystalline structure, like cracking or fracturing or stuff like that. There's manufacturing issues, very difficult. Then you could potentially create a material that you can actually increase the power level, so you can actually do faster processing. And as you increase the power level, the heat actually goes down. It does the complete opposite. And this is another thing. One of the feedback loops is that certain minerals in the under the earth actually increase the feedback loops for the crackpots with the global nonsense. Well, at the same time, boron, a number of other materials are shown to do the opposite. So that's thrown a spanner in the works. They won't talk about it because it really just mucks up a lot of their bullshit. So it's interesting, but also a material. As a material science, material for a lot of other processes, not only for chips, but they have to work out the fabrication issues, and the foundries need to find ways, maybe the way they will add some other materials in order to stabilize the actual the crystalline structure of boron. Yeah, it's still unclear, but it's interesting. It's really interesting that we've actually discovered these interesting effects of boron that could be used for chipsets. Oh shit! I'm at the bottom. Can you believe that? Thoughts on Dave Feldman? I've already covered that today. I've actually said I'm not going to cover it now. In Seedman, I did a whole splur on Dave earlier, so I'm not going to repeat myself. You should all, after this, go and check out. Well, wait until tomorrow because you do need to do the New Year's stuff. But those who have got time, like in Europe, which you're still waiting, you're behind the times, so to speak. You can actually go and check out my earlier live stream, and I do cover stuff on Dave. So rather than actually repeating the sort of same stuff that I said in the morning, I just think that he's wrong. He's probably unaware of the ApoE genes in the way they actually really work, and a few other things that I did mention. So I think he's on the wrong pathway. Stop hitting things, Harry. He's on the wrong pathway in that regard. So yeah. since there are no more questions, I'm going to call it a night so I can actually get ready to go down to watch the fireworks. Now, do please enjoy the fireworks wherever you are. And, I'll definitely see you all in the new year. Take care. Enjoy having plenty of steak tomorrow. And I'll take that and I'll put that, Nick, as a question to basically answer at some other time. So you came in too late. You should know that by now. And that would require to show genetics and stuff like that and cover it properly. Because I've got some differing opinions of what some other people talk about. Anyway, yes. Oh, always. Thank you for the kind sentiment. Nomad Man 777. Yes, good night to you as well, and thanks for being here and supporting the live stream because you guys make the difference. I'm here just a mouthpiece. Without you guys here, you don't have a live stream. So thank you for being here and supporting this channel. And thanks to all the actual supporters that threw in a few bob. Oops. Carnivore Muscle. Richard, Vivid Mouse, Tom J, and DC. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Yeah. Thanks, Johnny. Yes, I won't. I may pop in tomorrow on the Zoom. So if people want to see me on the Zoom, you may see me tomorrow, midday in Australia. I may pop on either in the afternoon or in the morning, one of the two. Probably in the afternoon because I do want to go for a bit of a long walk. So probably in the afternoon, which will be probably like 6 o'clock Australian Eastern Standard Time, daylight savings. So at the same time this live stream started, I will be on the Zoom session tomorrow night, the same time this started. So just think tomorrow, same time as this started. If you want to see me there, come on, say hello, and don't be shy. You don't have to have your video on, just audio. You can just talk to me or just listen to the ramblings of old people like me in the Zoom session, and Richard and Paul. I have an ongoing Zoom thing. I just let it go, and I occasionally put it up so it's ongoing. So same password, same everything. So if you use the link, I will drop it in just before I go. I'll drop it in the community page again, so it's there so people can go to it. And if you want to come tomorrow evening, Australian time, like 6 p.m., drop in and say hello. Definitely do. So I'll do that right after I finish this live stream. G'day, mate. How's it going? Yep. And Happy New Year to you as well. Yep. Yeah, I'll be putting it on right after here because if I don't do it now, I'll forget it. So I'm going to do it right now. And so people just need to go on it tomorrow at the same time this live stream started, which is 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, daylight savings. Same time if you're in Queensland, it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So, and anywhere further back, it's the adjusted time. So you just have to look at the time in your Eurasia. So if you look at the Eurasia descriptor, so in the description of the Eurasia live stream, the one that we're doing now, if you go into the description, you can actually see the city you're in or the location on the planet you are in and what time is equivalent to start time. And that is the time that I'll be in the Zoom tomorrow. So if you want to drop in and say hello and we'll chat about anything, on there, we're free to say anything. Nothing's controversial. you know. So anything. I may disagree with you. That's a different thing. I'm not always agreeable with everyone, but it's free speech. We don't have any YouTube restrictions or anything like that. You know, you may disagree with me. That's fine as well. You know, I don't have a problem sometimes with a number of people. With this fellow here, he turns up and I have a few discussions about different things, and so does this fellow here and Paul as well. He's gone. He's probably gone. You know, probably gone to sleep now. Put his alpacas to sleep. Um, and the cat, yes. So the cat turns up. He pretty much ignores everyone, the cat. But anyway, thank you, everyone. Wishing all of you a happy new year for you and your families. Let's hope that most of these crazies and crackpots and globalists get the kick in the teeth. Not yet, Harry and Paul. And pretty much that the Zooming, Mr. Paul. Okay, you guys are going to do a late Zooming, are you? Fair enough. You never know. I might pop in for a few minutes and then I'll piss off. So you may see me right after this. But yeah, so do feel free to turn up tomorrow. That I will definitely be there, and we will say good night. I will say to each other, and I will see all of you lovely, lovely people. Especially tomorrow night. And so I hope you all have, a really good New Year and good celebrations with your family and friends. Because remember, those people are very important. Because when shit hits the fan, it's only close friends and family you can rely on. Because you can't rely on politicians, believe me. Anyway, take care. See yous.